In April 2015, London became the stage for one of the most audacious and meticulously planned heists in modern history. Over the Easter weekend, when the city was quiet and most people were away on holiday, a group of elderly men carried out a crime that would leave the police, media, and public in disbelief. Their target was the Hatton Garden Safe Deposit Company, a facility located in London's famous jewelry district, known for housing millions of dollars worth of valuables. The gang, which later became known as the Hatton Garden Crew, was anything but an ordinary group of criminals. These men, aged between 60 and 75 years old, were experienced thieves and former career criminals, many of whom had been involved in high-profile robberies decades earlier. They weren't just motivated by money. For some, this heist was a final act of defiance, a chance to prove they still had what it took to pull off the ultimate crime. The planning for the Hatton Garden heist began months in advance. The men spent weeks studying the building, analyzing its security measures, and determining the best way to bypass them. Surveillance footage would later reveal that members of the gang made multiple visits to the area in the months leading up to the heist, posing as ordinary passers-by or tradesmen to avoid suspicion. They carefully observed the movements of employees, the schedule of the building's cleaning staff, and any potential weaknesses in the facility's layout. Their target wasn't just the safe deposit boxes, but the trust people placed in such facilities. Hatton Garden was considered one of the most secure deposit centers in London, housing hundreds of boxes filled with cash, jewelry, and other valuables. The gang knew that if they succeeded, they would not only make millions, but also shake the confidence of the entire industry. Key to their plan was acquiring the right equipment. Over several weeks, the group purchased industrial tools, including a diamond-tipped drill capable of cutting through concrete. This drill, weighing approximately 100 pounds, was essential to their scheme, as it would be used to breach the thick, reinforced wall that separated them from the vault. They also carried heavy-duty crowbars, bolt cutters, and other tools necessary to open the individual safe deposit boxes. The timing of the heist was deliberate. The gang chose the Easter weekend because they knew the building would be closed for 4 consecutive days, giving them ample time to complete the job without interruption. The city would be quieter than usual, and any noise they made during the operation was less likely to draw attention. It was a perfect storm of opportunity and preparation, the culminations of months of careful planning. What set this heist apart wasn't just the scale of the crime, but the personalities involved. These were not reckless young men, but seasoned veterans who had spent decades navigating the underworld. Their leader, a man known only as Basil, remained an enigma throughout the operation. He was the one who allegedly had the inside knowledge of the building's security system, allowing the gang to disable the alarms and enter undetected. The rest of the crew included men with nicknames like the Master and the Governor, each bringing their own expertise to the table. By the time the Easter weekend arrived, every detail had been accounted for. The gang knew how to bypass the building's security measures, what tools they would need to access the vault, and how much time they had to complete the job. They even had contingency plans in case something went wrong. For them, this was not just a heist, but a meticulously orchestrated operation that required precision, discipline, and nerves of steel. As the weekend approached, the gang made their final preparations. Each member had a specific role to play, from drilling through the concrete wall to collecting the valuables from the safe deposit boxes. They knew this might be their last big job, and they were determined to succeed. What they didn't know is that this heist, while meticulously planned, would become one of the most infamous crimes in British history, not just for its success, but for the unexpected twists and the mistakes that would eventually lead to their downfall. The preparation for the Hatton Garden heist was as extraordinary as the crime itself. The men behind the robbery were not amateurs. Each member of the gang brought decades of experience in theft, burglary, and evading law enforcement. They weren't just planning to rob a vault, they were orchestrating an operation that would be remembered for generations. At the center of this crew was a man known only as Basil. Even today, Basil's full identity remains shrouded in mystery, though he was described as the mastermind of the heist. Basil was the one with insider knowledge of the Hatton Garden Safe Deposit Company. It's believed he had access to detailed floor plans of the building, and more crucially, knew how to disable the alarm system. Without his expertise, the robbery would never have been possible. Some theorists speculate that Basil may have been a former employee, or had close ties to someone working within the facility. The rest of the gang was composed of seasoned criminals, most of whom were in their 60s and 70s. Brian Reeder, often referred to as the Master, was a veteran thief with a reputation as one of the most meticulous planners in the business. Terry Perkins, a diabetic in his late 60s, was known for his involvement in major robberies dating back to the 1980s. Danny Jones, known as the Governor, was an experienced burglar with a knack for safecracking. John Kenny Collins served as the lookout and driver, ensuring the team's movements went unnoticed. Carl Wood and Hugh Doyle also played supporting roles, handling logistics and ensuring the gang had access to the tools and resources they needed. The target of their heist, the Hatton Garden Safe Deposit Company, was no ordinary facility. Located in London's famous jewelry district, Hatton Garden was considered one of the most secure vaults in the city. It housed hundreds of safe deposit boxes belonging to jewelers, wealthy individuals, and even organized crime dealers. The vault was protected by a 20-inch thick reinforced concrete wall, state-of-the-art locks, and a sophisticated alarm system. For most people, it was impenetrable. But for this gang of veterans, it was the ultimate challenge. Months before the heist, the gang began their reconnaissance. They visited the building multiple times, posing as tradesmen or delivery personnel to avoid suspicion. During these visits, they meticulously observed the security measures in place. They noted the locations of surveillance cameras, the routines of the cleaning staff, and the building's entrances and exits. One of the lesser-known details is that they even monitored nearby businesses to ensure their activities wouldn't be noticed by shop owners or employees working late hours. The gang's attention to detail was unparalleled. They discovered that the main entrance to the building would be locked during the Easter weekend, but a side door leading to the service elevator could be accessed with minimal effort. This door became their primary point of entry. Basil, leveraging his inside knowledge, also identified a key vulnerability in the alarm system, a maintenance panel that could temporarily disable the system without triggering an alert. It's still unclear how Basil acquired this information, but his ability to exploit this weakness was critical to their success. Once they had mapped out their plan, the gang turned their attention to equipment. One of their most significant purchases was a Hilti DD350 diamond core drill, a heavy-duty machine designed to cut through concrete. Weighing over 100 pounds and capable of drilling precise holes in reinforced walls, the drill was essential for breaching the vault. The gang also acquired industrial crowbars, sledgehammers, and other tools to break open the individual safe deposit boxes. Interestingly, the gang paid close attention to how they acquired these tools. To avoid drawing attention, they purchased equipment from multiple suppliers and in small quantities. They even used fake names and addresses for certain transactions, ensuring that their purchases couldn't be easily traced. This level of caution highlights their deep understanding of police investigative techniques. In the weeks leading up to the heist, the gang met regularly to refine their plan. These meetings often took place in unassuming locations, such as pubs or the homes of gang members. During these sessions, they rehearsed their roles and discussed contingency plans for potential problems. For example, they planned to leave the building immediately if the alarm couldn't be disabled, or if they encountered unexpected obstacles. One detail that often goes unnoticed is how the gang prepared for the physical demands of the heist. At their age, spending hours drilling through concrete and prying open safe deposit boxes was no small feat. Danny Jones, one of the more physically fit members of the crew, took on the most labor-intensive tasks. Meanwhile, Terry Perkins, despite his diabetes, was determined to contribute equally, even bringing insulin with him in case of a medical emergency. As Easter weekend approached, the gang finalized their preparations. They conducted a final walkthrough of the plan, ensuring every detail had been accounted for. Each member knew their role. Basil would handle the alarm system, Reeder and Jones would operate the drill, Collins would monitor the area outside the building, and Perkins would oversee the collection of valuables. They even had a backup plan for transporting the stolen goods, using large wheelie bins to move the cash and jewelry, without attracting attention. Despite their meticulous planning, the gang knew they were taking a significant risk. The Hatton Garden Safe Deposit Company was one of the most high-profile targets in London, and any mistake could result in immediate arrest. But for these men, many of whom had spent their lives on the edge of the law, the potential reward was worth the gamble. They weren't just chasing money, they were chasing a legacy. By the time Easter weekend arrived, the gang was ready. Months of planning, surveillance, and preparation had brought them to this moment. They knew this would be their final opportunity to pull off a heist of this scale. For them, it wasn't just about the loot, it was about proving that even in their twilight years, they were still masters of their craft. The execution of the Hatton Garden heist began on Thursday, April 2, 2015, as Londoners prepared for the Easter weekend. The streets were quieter than usual, and businesses in the jewelry district were closing early. For the gang, this was the moment they had been meticulously planning for months. Everything had to go perfectly, as this would likely be their last chance to pull off such an audacious crime. The operation started under the cover of darkness. The gang arrived at Hatton Garden Safe Deposit Company in a white van loaded with tools and equipment. Their entry point was a small, rarely used side door that led to the building's service area. This door had been identified during their reconnaissance missions as a potential weak point in the building's security. Using a duplicate key, likely obtained by Basil through his insider knowledge, they unlocked the door and entered the premises without triggering any alarms. Once inside, the group moved quickly to disable the building's alarm system. Basil, the alleged mastermind, took the lead. He accessed a maintenance panel using his inside knowledge to temporarily disable the alarm. To this day, it remains unclear how Basil knew the system's intricacies, but his expertise allowed the gang to proceed undetected. The next challenge was reaching the vault, located 2 floors below ground level. The building's elevator, which normally provided access to the lower levels, was locked. To bypass this, the gang manually forced the elevator doors open and climbed down the shaft using ropes. This was no small feat, especially given their ages. Most members of the group were in their 60s or 70s. Their determination and physical stamina were nothing short of remarkable. Once in the basement, the gang faced their most formidable obstacle, a 20-inch thick reinforced concrete wall that protected the vault. For this, they relied on their most critical piece of equipment, the Hilti DD350 diamond core drill. Weighing over 100 pounds and capable of cutting through solid concrete, the drill was a vital component of their plan. The team carefully positioned the drill and began the painstaking process of creating 2 overlapping holes large enough for a man to crawl through. The drilling process was both physically demanding and mentally exhausting. The gang worked in shifts to avoid fatigue, with Danny Jones and Terry Perkins handling the bulk of the drilling. The noise and vibrations from the drill were significant, but the gang had chosen the Easter weekend precisely because they knew the surrounding businesses would be closed, minimizing the risk of detection. Despite their careful planning, the drilling took longer than expected due to technical issues with the equipment. At one point, the drill overheated, forcing the team to pause and improvise repairs. After hours of labor, the concrete wall was finally breached, revealing the vault. Inside, the gang found rows of safe deposit boxes, each potentially containing millions in cash, jewelry, gold, and other valuables. The next phase of the operation required brute force. Using industrial crowbars, bolt cutters, and other tools, they began prying open the boxes one by one. Each box was a gamble. Some contained vast fortunes, while others held only documents or personal items of little value. The gang worked methodically, opening as many boxes as possible within the limited time frame they had. What they discovered inside the boxes was beyond their expectations. The vault contained cash bundles wrapped in currency bands, sparkling diamonds, gold bars, rare watches, and family heirlooms. The gang stuffed the loot into large duffel bags and wheelie bins, which they had brought specifically to transport the stolen goods. By the time they finished, they had amassed a haul worth an estimated $20 million. Despite their success, the heist was not without complications. As the gang worked, they encountered problems with some of the tools, which slowed their progress. Additionally, the sheer volume of valuables made it difficult to transport everything in one trip. At one point, they debated whether to take a second night to finish the job. Ultimately, they decided to return to the site on Saturday night, a decision that would later become a critical mistake. When they returned 2 days later, the gang resumed their work, opening additional safe deposit boxes and collecting more valuables. The second visit significantly increased their total haul but also exposed them to greater risk. Police investigations later revealed that the building's alarm system had registered irregularities during their first night inside, but no action was taken by the security company. The gang's bold decision to return highlighted their confidence but also their desperation to maximize their gains. By the end of their second visit, the gang had taken as much as they could carry. They carefully exited the building the same way they had entered, leaving behind a vault in chaos. The floor was littered with broken deposit boxes, discarded tools, and debris from the drilling. Despite the mess, the gang left no fingerprints or DNA evidence, a testament to their meticulous planning and execution. Their escape was as carefully orchestrated as the heist itself. The stolen goods were loaded into their van and transported to a safe house, where the loot was divided among the members. Each participant received a share of cash and valuables, though the exact amounts remain unknown. The gang's ability to avoid immediate detection was remarkable, given the scale of the crime. For a brief moment, it seemed like they had pulled off the perfect heist. The public wouldn't learn about the robbery until the following Tuesday, when employees returned to Hatton Garden after the holiday weekend and discovered the devastated vault. The scene they encountered was described as something out of a movie. A gaping hole in the wall, dozens of ransacked boxes, and millions of dollars missing. Despite their success in executing the heist, the gang's decision to return to the vault and their overconfidence would ultimately lead to their downfall. But for now, they celebrated what they believed to be a flawless operation, unaware that the police were already beginning to piece together the clues that would bring them to justice. Back at their safe house, the gang began sorting the loot they had meticulously stolen. The process was methodical. Cash, gold, and jewelry were categorized, with items like watches or unique pieces marked as risky due to their traceability. The cash was easier to divide. Bundles of untraceable bills were split among the group. The sheer amount astounded even these seasoned criminals. However, disagreements arose. Some members felt the operation's risks didn't justify their haul, while others believed they had pushed their luck by returning for a second night. Transporting their loot also presented unexpected challenges. The wheelie bins they had used to move valuables out of the building were impractical for long distances. At one point, they had to stop and redistribute the weight of the bags, improvising to avoid drawing suspicion. Despite their planning, even these experienced criminals faced logistical hurdles. The psychological strain of the heist began to show. Basil, the mastermind, was unusually distant, avoiding much of the group's celebratory atmosphere. Tensions brewed as suspicions emerged that Basil might have taken a larger share of the loot or withheld critical information. These cracks in their unity, though minor at first, would later play a significant role in the gang's downfall. When news of the heist broke on Tuesday, April 7th, the gang saw their work splashed across every major media outlet. The story was hailed as the heist of the century, drawing comparisons to legendary robberies like the Great Train Robbery of 1963. While the gang was thrilled at the recognition, they also understood that the heightened media attention increased their chances of being caught. The gang had been careful at the scene, leaving no fingerprints or DNA, but they underestimated modern surveillance. Investigators quickly identified irregularities in the alarm system logs, pinpointing when the security was disabled. CCTV footage from nearby streets showed their white van and shadowy figures entering and leaving the building. Though the footage was grainy, it provided enough information for police to begin piecing the case together. The gang's overconfidence began to work against them. Some members couldn't resist flaunting their new wealth. Suspicious purchases and careless communications left a digital trail that investigators were able to trace. Meanwhile, their decision to involve a minor associate, Hugh Doyle, in the aftermath of the heist provided a critical break for law enforcement. Doyle's connection to the gang, though tangential, gave the police a lead that would eventually tie the group together. Despite these missteps, the gang remained convinced of their success in the immediate aftermath. They believed their planning had covered every angle, and their confidence only grew as days passed without police intervention. However, the combination of modern technology and their own mistakes began to unravel their plan, setting the stage for one of the most famous investigations in British history. On Tuesday morning, April 7, 2015, employees of the Hatton Garden Safe Deposit Company returned to work after the Easter holiday weekend. What they found left them in utter shock. The vault, once considered one of the most secure in London, had been breached. A massive hole had been drilled into the 20-inch thick concrete wall. Safe deposit boxes lay smashed open, and debris littered the floor. It was immediately apparent that this was no ordinary burglary. Within minutes, the police were called, and an investigation was launched. As they surveyed the scene, the sheer audacity and precision of the heist became clear. Investigators from the Flying Squad, a specialist unit of the London Metropolitan Police, were tasked with solving the case. The Flying Squad had a long history of dealing with high-profile robberies, but even they were unprepared for the challenges this heist presented. The gang behind the crime had left behind no fingerprints, no DNA, and no clear leads. They had meticulously planned their entry and exit, ensuring that they left behind as little evidence as possible. The crime scene itself offered few immediate clues. The most striking feature was the hole in the vault wall, a testament to the gang's persistence and technical expertise. The wall had been drilled using a Hilti DD 350 diamond core drill, a specialized tool capable of cutting through reinforced concrete. The gang's precision in positioning and operating the drill suggested they had rehearsed or conducted extensive planning. The vault floor was scattered with the remains of over 70 ransacked safe deposit boxes. Their contents, cash, gold, jewelry, and other valuables, gone. The estimated value of the stolen goods was staggering, $20 million. While the gang's careful planning meant there was little physical evidence, they couldn't completely escape the watchful eyes of London's CCTV cameras. Investigators began reviewing footage from the area, and it wasn't long before they discovered a white van parked outside the building on the nights of the heist. This van became the first critical lead in the investigation. Further footage revealed blurry figures entering and exiting the building, carrying large bags and bins. While their faces were obscured, the footage provided a timeline of the gang's movements and confirmed that they had returned to the scene on a second night. The police also turned their attention to the building's alarm system. Although the gang had disabled it during the heist, the system logs showed irregular activity at the times the gang was inside. This data, combined with the CCTV footage, helped investigators piece together the sequence of events. The breakthrough in the investigation came when the white van was traced to John Kenny Collins, a man with a history of criminal activity. Collins had previously been involved in several robberies and was already known to law enforcement. With Collins under surveillance, investigators began monitoring his contacts and movements. It soon became clear that he wasn't acting alone. Further digging revealed connections to Terry Perkins, another seasoned criminal with a long history of high-profile robberies. Perkins, who was in his late 60s, had previously been involved in one of the UK's largest cash robberies, the Security Express heist of 1983. Danny Jones, another member of the group, also had a reputation as a skilled burglar and safecracker. These names, alongside Brian Reeder, dubbed the Master, formed the core of what would later be known as the Hatton Garden Crew. Despite their experience, the gang began to make mistakes. Perkins and Jones, emboldened by their success, started making large cash purchases that attracted attention. One of them even boasted to an associate about the heist, unaware that the associate was under police scrutiny for unrelated activities. This loose talk eventually reached investigators, providing them with additional leads. Another key figure in the unraveling of the gang was Hugh Doyle, a plumber with a minor role in the operation. Doyle had helped with logistical support but wasn't directly involved in the heist itself. However, during a routine interview with police about unrelated matters, Doyle's nervous behavior and vague answers raised suspicions. When investigators dug deeper, they found ties between Doyle and other members of the gang. By May 2015, the police had gathered enough evidence to make their move. In a coordinated operation, they executed raids on the homes of the suspects. At Terry Perkins's house, investigators found jewelry and cash that matched descriptions of items stolen from the Hatton Garden vault. Similar discoveries were made at the residences of Danny Jones and John Collins. The arrests were swift and caught the gang off guard. However, one critical figure was missing: Basil, the mastermind who had allegedly orchestrated the heist and disabled the alarm system. His absence added another layer of mystery to the case. The arrests sent shockwaves through the public. The media quickly seized on the fact that most of the suspects were elderly men, dubbing them the Bad Grandpas and the OAP gang. For a public accustomed to imagining young, agile criminals in such daring heists, the revelation that the culprits were in their 60s and 70s was both surprising and oddly amusing. Headlines celebrated their audacity while also questioning how such an experienced group could make the mistakes that led to their capture. Despite the arrests, much of the loot remained missing. Investigators estimated that only about a third of the stolen goods were recovered. The rest, they believed, had been sold through underground networks or hidden in undisclosed locations. The gang members, even when faced with overwhelming evidence, refused to reveal the whereabouts of the missing items. This silence added to the mystique of the case and left victims frustrated, as many of the valuables stolen had significant, sentimental value. Interrogations of the gang revealed cracks in their unity. Danny Jones expressed anger at Basil, accusing him of taking a larger share of the loot and abandoning the rest of the group when things got risky. Perkins, meanwhile, remained defiant, refusing to cooperate with investigators. These internal tensions provided further insight into the dynamics of the gang, but did little to advance the recovery of the stolen goods. For law enforcement, the case was both a triumph and a challenge. While they had successfully apprehended most of the gang, the failure to recover the majority of the loot left a sense of incompleteness. Additionally, the mysterious absence of Basil raised questions about whether the full story of the heist would ever be known. Despite these unresolved elements, the arrests marked the beginning of the end for the Hatton Garden crew. As the investigation wound down, the scale and audacity of the heist continued to captivate the public. Documentaries, books, and films were quickly produced, immortalizing the gang and their crime. For the men involved, their legacy was cemented, not as anonymous criminals but as unlikely anti-heroes, whose daring and ingenuity, despite their eventual capture, made history. The Hatton Garden heist left a deep mark on British society, altering perceptions of security and igniting debates about crime and justice. For decades, private vault facilities like the one at Hatton Garden had been seen as impregnable, trusted by jewelers, collectors, and individuals to protect their most valuable possessions. This heist shattered that trust. The breach highlighted vulnerabilities in what was once considered the gold standard for security, sparking fears among clients of similar facilities across the country. The victims of the heist faced a mix of financial and emotional devastation. Many had lost irreplaceable items, including family heirlooms, personal documents, and rare collectibles. While some could quantify their losses in monetary terms, others struggled with the emotional weight of never recovering sentimental treasures. The fact that the gang was able to return to the scene for a second night only intensified the outrage, as it underscored lapses in surveillance and alarm monitoring. Several victims publicly criticized the vault operators, accusing them of negligence and demanding greater accountability. The public reaction to the heist was equally complex. While many empathized with the victims, others viewed the gang's actions as a thrilling tale of rebellion. The advanced age of the criminals, combined with their meticulous planning and non-violent methods, made them appear more like cunning anti-heroes than traditional offenders. This polarized response reflected broader societal attitudes toward crime, with some seeing the heist as a testament to ingenuity, and others as a sobering reminder of unchecked greed. The burglary had a profound impact on security measures across the vault industry. Operators began to recognize that traditional methods, such as thick concrete walls and steel doors, were insufficient to deter sophisticated criminals. In response, many facilities introduced multi-layered security systems that combined physical barriers with advanced technology. Biometric access controls, enhanced alarm systems, and 24/7 real-time monitoring became standard in vaults throughout the UK. The integration of artificial intelligence into these systems allowed for the detection of irregular activity, such as repeated access attempts or unexplained alarm deactivations. One of the most significant changes was the re-examination of alarm protocols. The heist had exposed a critical weakness: the reliance on external security companies to monitor alarms. Many businesses began bringing this responsibility in-house, ensuring that irregularities were investigated immediately. Background checks for employees and tighter control over sensitive information became priorities, as the crime underscored the risks of insider knowledge being used against the system. The lessons learned from Hatton Garden extended beyond the vault industry. Banks, museums, and other high-security facilities also revisited their protocols, incorporating the latest technology to prevent similar breaches. The heist had demonstrated that even the most robust defenses could be compromised by determined criminals, forcing industries worldwide to rethink how they balanced physical security and human oversight. The cultural impact of the heist was equally significant. Within days of the arrests, the media had transformed the gang into household names. Nicknames like the Bad Grandpas and the OAP Gang became shorthand for their unusual profile. The image of elderly criminals pulling off a $20 million robbery captivated the public, blending humor with astonishment. Books and documentaries soon followed, chronicling the events with a mix of admiration and intrigue. A film adaptation, The Hatton Garden Job, 2017, dramatized the heist, emphasizing the gang's resourcefulness and camaraderie. These portrayals, while entertaining, often romanticized the criminals, glossing over the harm caused to the victims. For many, the gang became symbols of rebellion, celebrated for their ability to outsmart the system despite their age. The media narrative played heavily on their perceived charm, reinforcing the idea of the heist as a clever caper rather than a serious crime. This romanticized portrayal, however, drew criticism from those who felt it trivialized the impact on the victims. While the gang may have avoided violence, their actions left lasting scars on those who lost irreplaceable possessions. For the victims, the ongoing fascination with the heist was a painful reminder of what had been taken, both materially and emotionally. The Hatton Garden heist may have ended with arrests and convictions, but several key questions remain unanswered, ensuring its place as one of the most intriguing crimes in modern history. The mystery surrounding the missing loot, the elusive figure known as Basil, and the possibility of additional accomplices continues to fascinate both investigators and the public. One of the most significant unanswered questions is the fate of the missing loot. While police recovered an estimated 1/3 of the stolen $20 million, the remaining 2/3 disappeared without a trace. The gang members who were caught refused to cooperate with investigators, and despite extensive searches, no additional valuables were ever located. Speculation about the missing items has ranged from plausible theories to wild speculation. Some believe the loot was sold through black market channels, while others suggest it was hidden in secret locations known only to Basil and a select few. The logistics of selling such high-value items without drawing attention would have been a challenge, even for experienced criminals. Gold and jewelry, especially unique pieces, are difficult to launder, as they can often be traced back to their original owners. This raises the possibility that much of the stolen loot remains hidden, waiting to be discovered. Over the years, there have been occasional rumors of items resurfacing in underground markets, but none have been definitively linked to the Hatton Garden heist. The absence of solid leads has only added to the mystique of the crime. Central to the enduring mystery of the heist is the enigmatic figure of Basil. Widely believed to be the mastermind behind the operation, Basil was the one who disabled the vault's alarm system and provided the insider knowledge critical to the success of the heist. Despite his pivotal role, Basil was never identified or apprehended. His ability to vanish without leaving a trace has led to numerous theories about his true identity and whereabouts. Some believe Basil was a former employee of the Hatton Garden Safe Deposit Company, or someone with direct connections to its operations. His detailed knowledge of the alarm system and building layout supports this theory. Others suggest he might have been a highly skilled professional thief with a background in security systems. A more controversial theory is that Basil may not have existed as a single person, but as a collective identity used by the gang to mask the involvement of multiple insiders. Basil's absence from the arrests and subsequent trial also raises questions about his role in dividing and managing the stolen loot. If he was indeed the mastermind, it's likely he kept the largest share for himself, leaving the other gang members to deal with the risks and consequences of the crime. His disappearance has cemented his status as one of the most mysterious figures in British criminal history, sparking endless speculation about whether he might one day resurface, or whether he has already escaped justice for good. Another lingering question is whether the gang had additional unidentified accomplices. While the core group of 6 individuals, Reeder, Perkins, Jones, Collins, Doyle, and Basil, was central to the operation, the scale and complexity of the heist suggest that others may have been involved. The logistics of transporting and hiding such a large amount of stolen goods, as well as the extended planning and surveillance required, could have required more participants than initially identified. The possibility of additional accomplices has been supported by certain anomalies in the case. For example, some witnesses reported seeing unfamiliar individuals near the scene of the heist on the nights in question, though their identities were never confirmed. Additionally, the gang's decision to use burner phones and their awareness of law enforcement tactics suggest a level of sophistication that might have involved outside expertise. If there were additional participants, they have managed to evade detection entirely, leaving another layer of intrigue to the story. The enduring fascination with the Hatton Garden heist lies not only in its unanswered questions, but also in its broader implications. The heist has come to symbolize the audacity and ingenuity of human ambition, even when directed toward criminal ends. For many, it represents the ultimate, perfect crime. Meticulously planned, brilliantly executed, and leaving behind a trail of mysteries that may never be fully solved. The cultural impact of the heist has been profound. Beyond its immediate headlines, the story has inspired books, films, and documentaries that explore its details and legacy. These works often romanticize the gang as clever anti-heroes, highlighting their age and nonviolent methods, rather than the harm caused to their victims. This narrative has contributed to the public's ongoing fascination with the crime, ensuring its place in the annals of history as a modern legend. However, the unanswered questions also serve as a reminder of the limitations of law enforcement and the complexity of the criminal underworld. Despite the advanced technology available to investigators and the eventual capture of most of the gang, key aspects of the case remain unresolved. The mystery of Basil's identity, the fate of the missing loot, and the potential involvement of other accomplices highlight the gaps in even the most thorough investigations. The Hatton Garden heist continues to captivate audiences worldwide, not just for what is known, but for what remains unknown. Will the remaining loot ever be found? Was Basil truly the mastermind, or is there more to the story? And could there be individuals who played critical roles in the crime but have never been identified? These questions keep the story alive, ensuring its place as one of the most intriguing and enduring mysteries of modern crime. The Hatton Garden heist stands as a unique moment in the history of crime, blending meticulous planning, extraordinary characters, and unanswered questions. Its uniqueness lies in the unlikely profile of the perpetrators, elderly men who used decades of experience to execute a modern-day robbery. Their advanced age contrasted sharply with the physical and mental challenges of the heist, turning them into unexpected anti-heroes. The media quickly latched onto this angle, dubbing them the bad grandpas and romanticizing their exploits. However, this portrayal overshadowed the harm caused to the victims, many of whom lost irreplaceable family heirlooms and valuables of deep, sentimental value. The gang's methods showcased a mix of old-school criminal techniques and modern tools. The use of the Hilti DD-350 drill to penetrate the vault's 20-inch thick concrete wall was a hallmark of their precision and determination. However, their reliance on insider knowledge, attributed to the elusive Basil, revealed vulnerabilities in traditional vault security systems. The delayed response to alarm irregularities highlighted a critical failure in surveillance protocols. This heist became a wake-up call for the security industry, prompting widespread upgrades, including biometric access, 24/7 monitoring, and integrated digital systems. From a law enforcement perspective, the case underscored the need for adaptability in the face of evolving criminal tactics. While the gang eventually made critical mistakes, returning for a second night and flaunting their wealth, their use of burner phones and understanding of investigative methods showcased a level of sophistication that posed significant challenges for police. Culturally, the heist's legacy extends far beyond the courtroom. The story has inspired books, films, and documentaries, immortalizing the gang's audacity while fueling debates about morality and crime. For some, the Hatton Garden Gang represented cleverness and defiance, a David versus Goliath narrative against modern institutions. For others, this romanticized narrative ignored the profound impact on the victims. Despite the arrests, the heist remains shrouded in mystery. The fate of the missing loot and the identity of Basil continue to intrigue the public, ensuring the story's place in history as one of the most captivating crimes of the 21st century. Ultimately, the Hatton Garden heist is more than just a robbery. It is a reflection of human ambition, ingenuity, and the enduring allure of the perfect crime.